Okay, so first thing is to do the roll call. So I've got a note from Vice Chair Tessman that he is traveling and out of the country, so he will not make it. So Commissioner Aliff, see you there. Can you hear? Say something now. He's working it. Okay, I see him there. We'll come back around. Commissioner Lambert. I don't see him. Commissioner Aliff?
Present.
Good. I don't see Commissioner Lambert. Commissioner Mather? I don't see, oh, I do see Commissioner Lambert. Commissioner Lambert?
Present.
Excellent. And Commissioner Mather? I do not see Commissioner Mather. Commissioner Smith?
Here.
Commissioner Crone?
Present.
And myself, Chair Marusiak, I am here as well. So a couple notes on the agenda. We're going to change agenda item number 2. And rather than do it, it's going to be changed to the ADU accessory dwelling unit regulation review. There won't be a public hearing today. That public hearing will be held on August 7th with the appropriate notifications. Agenda item number 1, we're going to approve the minutes of June 20th. We looked at the minutes, and if you notice, we actually have the June 5th minutes in the package. So those will be updated. And also on August 7th, we'll go ahead and approve the June 20th minutes and not this meeting. So we will have as agenda the changes to accessory ADUs and the comprehensive plan, the planning commissioner meeting, and the items of planning commissioner interest and future agenda items. Can I get a motion? Actually, I move to approve the agenda as amended. Can I get a second?
Second.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay. Moving on to item number 2 on our package, changes to accessory dwelling unit regulations.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and commission members. I'm Jonathan Kessler, Senior Planner with Current Planning emphasis with City of Snoqualmie. Back in June, we had discussed the accessory dwelling unit updates. The legislature had passed a couple of bills regarding ADUs. And one does pertain to smaller cities like the City of Snoqualmie. And accordingly, we are discussed at that time updating our municipal code to bring it in compliance with the new state law. We did go ahead and do that, and you'll have in your packets the memo, which I can go over. There's also a strikeouts and underlines for the changes that would be made to the code. And then a handy, as it's called, crosswalk, or basically a kind of a spreadsheet layout showing the different sections that would be affected in the code. There's actually were several locations in that regard that would need to be updated. So the requirement is to do it within 6 months after the periodic update of the comp plan. But as we're about to really focus on the comp plan in the next few months, staff thought it was good to just go ahead and get this out of the way and bring it into compliance, because it's a pretty easy lift. One other thing I did discover when we were preparing this is we are going to need to add some definitions, which is in your packet. And one thing about that is the way that definitions were laid out, it doesn't allow for easy additions of new definitions. So we've come up with a new format for listing the definitions, and that's going to be the top of item 2. So page 1 of 10 on that accompanying the memo, which is actually page 7 on the whole packet. So what we had to do was there's a series of lettering that went A through Z, and then it started over with double A through Z, and then triple A through triple Z, etc. Instead, we're going to move to having definitions under 171020 of the code, and then for each letter of the alphabet, it's going to be assigned a code section. So 171025 would be A definitions, 171030 B definitions, and so on. That allows for just innumerable additions, if we so wanted to, under each letter of the alphabet, rather than trying to sync each particular definition with lettering. Most other cities use this method. It's more of a housekeeping thing, really, I would think, but just a common sense approach, and something that's going to allow for us to make easy additions regarding definitions. As you look through those, you'll note that under each letter, there are the additions where they apply, like under A, attached accessory dwelling unit is a new definition. And as you flip through the pages, you'll see periodically under different letters, you have different definitions. Happy to discuss that individually, but we'd like to move on and mention that our next section is 1715 residential district regulations. So there were some changes that would be required in that section, as well as in 173270 for site design, talking about ADUs. So ADUs are kind of spread throughout the codes. So it took quite a bit of checking, but we were able to track them down. And then 1755-70 is the actual in-depth discussion about accessory dwelling units. And I will note that the main change of the law for Snoqualmie would be, I guess, the most important change is that going from 1 to 2 ADUs per lot. So the former limit of 1 would need to be modified to allow up to 2 per lot. In addition, the legislature in the law stated that there can't be any more restrictions on ADUs as far as like design or things of that type size than apply for primary dwelling units. Also, the size of the ADU was enlarged to 1,000 square feet as the maximum that would be allowed. And this would make it a statewide standard in that respect. So 1755-70, you'll see, so there were a number of changes there that I'm happy to go over in more detail. If you check your crosswalk, which is item 2 under my section, it lists them by the code, and then it tells you what the existing code is under the city, and then what the new regulation would be per House Bill 1337. Are there any general questions, or certainly I can go over individual parts if you like?
Just to summarize, the big changes, rather than 1, there's 2 ADUs. And rather than 600, it's 1,000 square feet is the maximum. Mm-hmm. And it looks like they're not requiring more than 1 parking unit needed there.
Correct.
And this should apply to currently zoned residential housing areas. So
Right.
does that include the ROA?
It would be any residential area unless the legislature did say if there's restrictive covenants that limit them, that they would not attempt to, try and alter those, because there's different HOAs around the state that were adopted at different times. So if it's in that type of
Let me ask it
regulation,
differently. Does it apply to SR1 and SR2?
it would not, because they have a different set of regulations. So it would be that would govern. in this
That's a
case.
key. That's a key point of everything we're discussing here. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Other questions, or like I said, I can go.
Let
we
me
can
see.
start.
Commissioner Aliff?
I noticed what I believe is an editing mistake in section E, where it contains the word family and the definition therein, and it should be in section F. So on page 2, line 89.
Yes, sorry about that.
No worries. I just wanted to make certain we caught it before we move through.
Public hearing. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Good eye.
Anything else, Commissioner Aliff?
No, that was it.
Okay. Commissioner Smith, any comments?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. Nothing yet. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Lambert?
Nope.
Commissioner Crone?
Just one question in section O, line 212, when we define owner means any person who has at least 50% ownership. Could you, I'm just not familiar with that specific definition. What if there were 3 owners and they were all equal? Cover that, or
I believe that's would be under the state law. So there's got to be apparently someone that would have 50% or half ownership of it.
okay, cool. Thanks.
Okay. So any other comments or discussion on the changes to the accessory dwelling unit regulations? All right, and we're going to be prepared for the public hearing on August 7th.
August 7th? Yes, we'll bring it back at that time.
Have you, since you first presented this in June, were there any comments from the public at that point?
Not at this time, or not since then. Correct.
Okay. It is a big deal until you say it doesn't really apply to SR1, SR2. And it's like, okay, it's still a big deal, but okay. Now, what I normally do after waiting a while is I go for excused and unexcused absences. I received an email from Vice Chair Tessman. He's out of country. So I move that we excuse him from today's meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, I did not get any communication from Commissioner Mather that he was not going to be here. And I would move that he be unexcused from today's meeting. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so for the record, Vice Chair Tessman is excused and Commissioner Mather is unexcused. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, comprehensive plan land use policy review.
Before you move on, I think
Yeah.
I may have found another editing mistake. I just wanted to call it out.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Page 3 on the prior section, G definitions, gross floor area. There's a 20 garage in there, line 113.
What line was it?
Line 113, page 3.
There was an addition for gross floor area for dwelling means, okay, and you're saying means for the interior, but not to include yeah, I believe it picked up the numbering from that.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that's struck.
Thank you.
Thanks for catching that. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Ayliff. Okay, agenda item number 3, comprehensive plan land use policy review. I understand this is going to be the first of a couple passes, right? And
yeah, go ahead, Emily. Do you want to introduce me from there, or?
Yes, Emily Arteche, Community Development Director for the City of Snoqualmie. Today we have our land use consultant, Matt Covert,
Yep.
from our land use consulting firm, LDC, here to present some draft goals and policies on the land use element. And we'll open it up for an opportunity for discussion. And I'll be taking some notes in the back on the flip chart.
Thank you, commissioners. Good to see you this evening. As Community Development Director Arteche mentioned, this is the first of at least 2 meetings to discuss draft goal and policy changes to the land use element. This one we're just we're taking a soft launch to the land use element. We're going over the sections of the element that have the fewer changes, and then we'll deal with some of the thornier, kind of residential, commercial, citywide land use questions at the next time we go through this. But just wanted to highlight that again for you, that this will not be not be the last time you see probably these policies, and it will definitely not be the last time that you discuss draft goals and policies for the land use element. Do the slides, do you want me to go from, do we have a clicker, or do you need me to? I do have it on my computer.
It's just bring it up
Just,
and then
get on the Zoom meeting.
Are you
Okay,
promoted as a panelist?
I am not. I think I had to restart, so I need to be in Zoom. So after I join.
Website.
Oh, I guess, yeah, I do have the meeting packet open, so I can just do it that way.
You can just go to Planning Commission regular, you hit the PDF. That Planning Commission?
I think so.
It's a kind of a lot of pieces together. At the very top, there's a link.
There it is.
And then once you do that, you can hit share screen.
And I'll just share the presentation.
You can share just the presentation part if you want.
Okay.
If you have notes in the bottom, you want.
I'm being impaneled. All right, so let me go ahead and get this shared.
If you go to the share option that is in the middle, advanced, a box around your screen.
Oh, okay.
And then it just
I've never, man, this is great.
You can minimize that.
This is you'd think after
draw that box a little bit out.
You'd think after 3 years of this I would have learned more about Zoom, but
I just did this for another meeting. There you go. And then when you're ready to go to the next slide, just click over.
I have learned something new today. That is fantastic. So I will start at the very beginning, which is a very good place to start. As you read in the staff memo in the packet, the general approach to this, as I mentioned, the land use element is we're kind of splitting it up into at least 2 meetings. This meeting we're going over annexations and urban growth area policies and floodplain policies. Those are 2 categories of policies currently in the plan and as rewritten. There hasn't been there's the policies from the previous the currently adopted plan have largely been either moved to the municipal code where appropriate, or wholly rewritten. So you'll see in there that the policies have in general been simplified, sort of collapsed into fewer into fewer policies that are more clear. And in the cases where they deal with specific regulations or specific criteria for things like annexations, for example, those have been moved to the municipal code. There's also been some language updates to make the policies more consistent with countywide planning policies, which have obviously been recently adopted, as well as all the changes to state law that have come about since the currently adopted plan was adopted. And there were some cases where there was language in multiple policies that was duplicative, and that was part of that process of condensing the policies into fewer and broader and more clear policies than were in the previous plan. So what we're going to do in this meeting, with given that kind of just general context, is, and I've got the previous policies, like the spreadsheet that you have in your packet, up on here as well, so I can refer to that if I need to. But what we're going to do is go through the proposed policies, and you see up at the top on the header, there's these categories may not be the final categories as they appear in the plan. They're more conceptual for us at this point, but kind of grouping policies by whether they have to do with annexations, UGA expansions, or the floodplain. And there are divisions that are currently within the plan, but again, because so much has been rewritten here, the structure, this isn't a hard and fast, like these will be the categories. Things are open to change and revision, the categories as well as the policies. So we're going to go through each of these policies and just read them aloud. You can see them up on the screen as well for those of you listening in online or on the phone. And we'll just kind of have a conversation about each of them. The intended purpose is noted in the packet. But if there's any questions about the context or any language that that from previous policies that any of you feel should be continued into this plan, this is an opportunity to begin having that conversation. So before I start going through these, any questions about the approach?
Any questions from the commission?
Excellent.
Good.
So we will get started. So we're going to take the same order basically that's in the spreadsheet that's in your packet. So we'll go annexations, urban growth areas, and floodplain in that order. So there's only two policies. Previously quite a few more. Only two land use policies proposed for annexations. You'll see in the spreadsheet that existing policies 7.8.1 through 7.8.8 all have to deal with criteria and procedures for annexations. Those are proposed to be moved to the municipal code, more in line with criteria and procedures for other land use related applications. So the two policies that we've got here shown up on the screen: number one, enter into interlocal agreements with King County for annexations when feasible, including the application of contingent zoning to potential annexation areas. So this, the origin of this has two parts. One is state law change a few years ago that created an alternative and in my mind, much preferred method for annexations, which is an interlocal agreement. So rather than the direct petition method, where you have to get an extremely high bar of property owners in the annexed area and do a sort of census before and after, this allows cities with an interlocal agreement with a county to undertake an annexation with fewer sort of boots on the ground, nuts and bolts kind of work that the city has to do that's extremely expensive and time consuming. And so that's, I think, for annexations where it pencils out and you still have to make the math work, it's a good pathway for cities to consider. And then the application of contingent zoning as part of an interlocal agreement, that's where the city would make clear what the land use regulations on that property will be when annexed into the city. That can really be helpful for determining, likely capacity of employment and jobs, and that relates to things like the comprehensive plan and growth targets. And so that's a useful tool. Any questions on that policy?
Any questions? No,
okay.
We're good.
Second policy, annexations should be reflective of the community's vision for growth, diversify the city's tax base, increase sales tax revenue, and be servable by public water and sewer, as well as the transportation network, including consideration of public transit. So that's, I think that kind of speaks for itself. That's just kind of the, setting the general tenor for when annexations are appropriate. I'll note there that the consideration of public transit, is kind of doing some heavy lifting because, Snoqualmie is not currently super well served by public transit, but it does provide an opening there for support of that. If further service is made available, that could be supported.
Okay, seems straightforward.
Looks like we have a hand raised.
Yes, Commissioner Smith.
Yeah, I was just curious in terms of how is the community vision for growth defined? Is that via the comp plan or some other mechanism?
Yeah, that's a good question. That would be through the comp plan. There's increasing things that the city has to do to satisfy state law on comp plans and the Growth Management Act in general. But there's still a lot of room for community vision for how those goals and requirements get accomplished.
It's helpful. Thank you. And while I'm thinking of it, on the interlocal agreement piece on number 1, I'm not familiar with that process. Is that something that a lot of other jurisdictions are currently using? I'm only kind of more familiar with the direct petition method.
Yeah, good question. It is a pretty new process, but from the communities that I work with, at least a couple are actively working on annexations using that interlocal agreement method with the county. In areas where like just the cost associated with doing annexations can be extremely high. It can cost to do the kind of the door-to-door, the door knocking element, and the petition element of the traditional annexations can cost tens of thousands of dollars for a small city, and dozens, if not hundreds of hours of employee or consultant time. So it can be pretty expensive. The interlocal agreement obviously does take coordination, but it also helps. It helps with the tax equity element as well, and it helps make it so that annexations that might pencil out, but for cost or jurisdictional coordination issues, can help them go forward. So right now I know of at least 2 cities that I work with that are pursuing annexations using this method.
Got it. Thank you. I have to read up more on that. This is very new to me. Is that how are the property owners' rights protected via the interlocal agreement method?
That is a great question. I'd have to read up a little more on this to give you a solid answer on that. I know that. Let me just for entering into the public record, I'm just trying to recall the RCW off the top of my head. 82. 14? No, that's the sales tax incentive. What is it? $35A, 14, 460, and 470 for the record. There's a nice fact sheet that MRSC has put out on this, so we can perhaps Community Development Director Arteche, we can put in the notes to maybe include that in the next packet.
Yeah, I'd love to read up on that. Thank you. This is really, really informative.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions on this one? Seeing none. Okay. So there's 2 proposed policies. This is the category on this is kind of been collapsed into urban growth area / land capacity. First one is present docket items addressing urban growth area adjustments to accommodate uses needed to serve the community. And number 2, regularly evaluate the supply of vacant land and land suitable for redevelopment. So this has been substantially condensed as well from the currently adopted plan, and this is really driven by the King County countywide planning policies already contain all the guidance on where and how UGA expansions are done. So policy language that duplicates that's proposed to be removed. The regularly evaluate the supply of vacant land and land suitable for redevelopment piece is sort of related to that interface between the buildable lands process that the county leads and the land capacity analysis that individual cities have to do using that data as part of the comp plan update. And we've already completed that for Snoqualmie. And I think regularly evaluate, I don't think it needs to get any more specific than this here, because the landscape on this, changes with state law. But for example, the 5-year check-in for the comp plan, because they're now on a 10-year schedule, at year 5, that's an opportunity for cities to kind of monitor implementation of the plan and whether stuff's being implemented in the way that it was proposed when the plan's adopted. And that's a really good opportunity to take another look at, okay, where did we say we had capacity, and when we adopted the plan, what's happened since then? Are there any reasons why stuff's not getting built as envisioned on those lands that have capacity? So that could pertain to that, and I think that would be a sensible implementation of that policy.
Yeah, question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an opportunity to increase the UGA for Snoqualmie?
Possibly. That's a interesting question. I know there's a 1-to-4 swap that's been a method that's been approved. So it's not so much an increase of the UGA as you swap area that's within the UGA for area that's not currently within the UGA at a certain ratio. So you can get land that's not developable and can never develop for whatever reason out of the UGA, if it's in the floodway or something, for example, or it's on tribally owned forest land or something, and add it somewhere else where it would definitely be more developable. So there are alterations. Expansions are really driven by what your current UGA is and what's currently in the city, and whether you've exhausted those other opportunities. And I know we've talked about that many times. I don't know if you have anything to add about that, Emily.
I would just mention the greatest UGA expansion would be the annexation area. That's our potential annexation area. So, with regards to other expansions outside of the PAA, it would come down to a 4-to-1, which is still yet to be determined from King County Council.
Thank you. Yeah, so I've tried to kind of keep up on that 4-to-1 thing, and it's taken some twists and turns. So so an outright expansion, unlikely, but swaps possibly, probably. And of course, there is a lot of potential capacity within the PAA that's currently within the UGA, but not within city limits. But as I talked about in the previous slide, there's that policy about be servable by public sewer and water and the transportation networks. There's a lot of legwork that has to go into that. If there were any annexations to be pursued in the PAA, those would all have to be in line in order to serve that potential growth.
Yeah, it sounds like that what we used to call Snoqualmie Hills West is the primary area of expansion, but that's currently in the UGA, right?
I believe so. That's just west of here, heading up toward the top of the hill. Or
as you go down the parkway, it'd be on the right. As you go down the parkway towards Railroad, it's on the right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's within the UGA currently, and there's quite, depending on how it's zoned with contingent zoning, there's quite a bit of potential employment and residential capacity. It's just, is it servable by public water and sewer, in what time scale? And we'd have to pursue an interlocal with King County, and so there's a lot of legwork to be done. But there is potential capacity within the UGA. So a UGA expansion would be, even if you proposed it, would be unlikely to be approved, because you do have quite a bit of potential capacity in the UGA already.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify an assumption I had. So outside of the mill site, which is in progress, and what we call Snoqualmie Hills West, I've got it in my head is Snoqualmie Hills West, there is very little, if any, UGA to develop. Those are the two areas. Okay,
Basically.
that's my working assumption. Okay.
Yep. As we identified in the land capacity analysis, there isn't much. and there is some capacity with potentially within within the potential annexation area in what you referred to as Snoqualmie Hills West. But that's not, because it's not within the city currently, you can't count it in your comp plan as like capacity that's within the city. Yeah, exactly. So but down the road could potentially be capacity within the city. So anyway, back to this, these two policies, present docket items addressing urban growth area adjustments to accommodate uses needed to serve the community. So that adjustments thing being as we mentioned, like a potential swap, for example. And then number 2, regularly evaluate the supply of vacant land and land suitable for redevelopment. And that could potentially support the city doing some updates to land capacity analysis at the 5-year check-in, which would be in 2029.
Okay.
Any questions about those policies? Okay. So the last few slides here are floodplain. There's a few more proposed policies in the floodplain kind of section or category. I put a map in here just for folks' reference. I just made this. This is the zoning and the parcels underneath with the floodplain and the floodway on top, just for reference. There was a policy that was removed that I thought was an interesting one on critical facilities and heavy industrial use. And I just wanted to note that heavy industrial use is not allowed anywhere in the floodplain currently. And actually, unless you count the quarry, which is a resource extraction zone, you actually don't have any heavy industrial land anywhere in the city. You have an industrial zone in the code, but it's not applied on the map. So that part was like, okay, so we don't need that. And the critical facilities one is interesting because that is likely to be a public facility. And just wanted to note that essential public facilities and other industrial or institutional uses will be covered at the next meeting, the next time we talk about land use policies, because that's covered elsewhere in other sections of the plan. This policy was just about discouraging limitations on where critical facilities and heavy industrial use can be applied in the floodplain. And there's already requirements that the state has put in place for essential public facilities in critical areas, and so that'll be we'll discuss, and resilience due to sort of the climate change work that the state and the county have done. So that'll be in the next meeting. That was an interesting policy to me. I just wanted to note for folks that we are going to cover those topics, just not at this meeting. There was a couple other policies that we proposed to be removed for a couple reasons. One, the duplication. So there's a base flood elevation policy that we was proposing to remove because that's already in the code. And so we're trying to make sure that the code and the plan reinforce each other, but aren't completely duplicative. So that's just general notes on the floodplain section. There's I think, what is it, like 6 or 7 policies that are proposed, draft policies that are proposed to replace what's there now, containing some of the same information, but adding a few things as well. These policies, and I'll read these one at a time because they're kind of long. Within the floodplain, allow for infill and redevelopment in residential zones featuring a range of housing options, including accessory dwelling units within walking distance of the historic downtown commercial core. Nice tie-in with the accessory dwelling units thing. Especially important in the floodplain because, as you saw on the map, the entire core, historic core of the city is basically, other than a small section on 384th near the top of the hill, is all within the floodplain. Yep. So they have to be elevated, but they are, like everything else, they need to be elevated, but they are permitted. And because there's the SR1 and SR2 covenant restriction on where HB 1337 applies. ADUs are this is kind of the spot where they'd be where that law would apply. And this is the range of housing options is to help address the changes to the Growth Management Act related to the housing element, and where range of housing options to address, to target all economic segments of the community should be allowed. So it's just language kind of broadly supportive of that. And the infill and redevelopment is in residential zones is to help address the fact that that Snoqualmie doesn't really have any vacant land, so very little. Any questions or comments about that policy?
Not to rattle things, but how did we build our brand spanking new high school in the floodplain? Is it elevated enough that no issue?
Great question. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming it had to be elevated quite a bit.
Be elevated, and it definitely has some underground garage, but
they probably
spent right across from Meadowbrook. Yeah,
they probably spent $10 million on fill or something. Looks like I got a commissioner raise his hand. Maybe he knows.
Who?
I do. I served on the high school design committee. Just
okay.
Separate context, but yeah, that is why there's parking underneath the facility, was in order to meet the requirements of the floodplain. So like all the facilities are raised above that floodplain level. So
makes sense. It's definitely up, and it definitely has underground parking. Okay.
The elevators, interestingly enough, are also designed to be submersible because they go down. Just so you know.
Willy Wonka elevator.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know. All right. Hey, thank you, Commissioner Elf. That was useful.
Number 2. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Any other questions on the floodplain? Okay, go ahead.
Number 2, protect development from flood hazards through the application of residential lot coverage and impervious surface standards. Any questions about that one? Number 3, support commercial uses compatible in scale and character to existing single-family uses in residentially zoned districts within the floodway. So this is most of what's in the floodway within city limits is residential. There's a couple businesses on the downtown edge that are at least partially within the floodway, but a lot of it's existing sort of single family, and I think there's a couple like duplex and triplex units as well. So supporting commercial uses compatible in scale and character to existing single family, meaning they would not be new construction that would not be allowed because they're in the floodway. So you'd be thinking like home-based businesses, or a law office in an old home or something would be kind of the kind of uses that we'd be talking about here. Any questions on that one?
Questions? Okay.
Number 4, work with governmental agencies to acquire high-risk, chronically affected, and repetitive loss riverfront properties within the floodway. Fairly straightforward. Any questions on that?
No, let's go.
Number 5, continue to participate in the FEMA flood insurance program and community rating system and implement measures to improve the city's flood insurance rating to benefit floodplain property owners. Continuation of support for existing programs, and work to improve the flood ratings, the flood insurance rating system, or the flood insurance rating. Any questions?
No.
And then lastly, support programs that address potential displacement of commercial uses in the floodway. So again, there aren't many, but with a proposed policy to encourage support commercial uses compatible in scale and character to existing single family, and because there are a few businesses currently located in the floodway. Displacement due to flooding is something that can affect obviously affect both residents and businesses. And so since there are already the FEMA flood insurance program and community rating system, for example, would not necessarily affect a business that may or may not be the owner of the property in question. So this policy kind of helps just provide some general support for additional measures the city could, look into, programs the city could look into that might address potential displacement of commercial uses. Any questions?
Okay.
Oh, that's it. That's what we got. So again, this is a soft launch. The next one will probably be longer, because we'll be talking, residential use, commercial use, industrial, institutional, and there's quite a bit of policy work in the land use element that interfaces with the housing element on things like making land available for all the range of housing options that you're required to plan for under the Growth Management Act. So that one will be a little more involved. But thank you so much for your input on this one. I see David Goodman with the city is on there as well, since I worked closely with him and with Community Development Director Arteche to develop this. David, any additional input or thoughts on this?
Nope. I thought you covered it really well. And I thought it was nice and fortuitous that we had a member of the high school design committee to answer the question about the high school. That's pretty neat.
And so, we took some notes, and we'll take a picture of that and get it typed up, and we'll add some information on the interlocal annexation information to the packet for next time. So, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Yeah, likewise. Okay, we'll move on to next agenda item, which is Planning Commission meeting start time. We discussed this a few months ago, but we've got some different players here now. We talked about, does a different day work? And at the time, the whole commission said a different day doesn't really work. So even though we don't like the later 7:30 start time, we'd rather it stay on Monday. Well, now I would like to propose that we change the start time of the Planning Commission meeting, keep it on Monday, but change it to 7 p.m. because apparently we've got the time. The committee's been ending early every time, so we can start half an hour early. So how's everybody feel about that? Quick poll, Commissioner Aliff?
I can do 30 minutes earlier. That would be very reasonable.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
No opinion either way.
Okay. Commissioner Smith?
Yeah, I think 30 minutes earlier is just fine. I don't see any conflicts there that I can think of.
Okay. Commissioner Lambert?
Yeah, 30 minutes is fine.
Commissioner Crone?
Works great for me.
Okay. Then do I make a motion here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then I formally move that we change the start time of the Snoqualmie Planning Commission from 7:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. the first and third Mondays of the month. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. And now we go on to items of Planning Commissioner interest. So I'm going to just do a quick round robin here. Commissioner Aliff?
I've received a lot of questions about the works on the curb associated with the repaving of the parkway. I'm sure a lot of other people have as well, and I just didn't have a good pithy answer as to why we're doing the curb work. I hadn't had my guesses, but I just wanted to hear from somebody from the city that is more familiar with public works to be able to answer the question.
I was going to ask the same thing. Any answer? We need to gather an answer. We need to get one. Okay. Okay. We'll circle back, I guess is the phrase.
Sounds
right?
good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Aliff?
That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Lambert?
I was kind of curious about all of the businesses that we've talked about in downtown Snoqualmie, what their status are. The Sigillo Cellars in the gravel parking lot, the Mexican restaurant back there, the clothing store. I think there was one other.
So good.
Chair Maruziak.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
CD Director.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking that question. Some of the businesses that we anticipated coming in this summer with permit applications have indicated to us that economic times have been difficult and they have slowed down their anticipated permit submittal timeline. I don't know exactly how long it will take, but for example, Snoqualmie Winery has indicated that they're not ready to submit for building permit. They came in earlier this spring for a pre-application conference, and we were waiting for them to follow through with next steps, meaning a submittal of an application, and they just said they couldn't do it. And the same for our mill site development as well. We know they're coming forward, but not at this time.
Wow.
Were there other specific sites that you wanted me to address besides those two?
Yeah, the little clothing boutique store next to the Snoqualmie Brewery, and then I think the Mexican restaurant that's was supposed to go in back there.
Yeah, I do not have an update on either of those two. I know that the clothing store was going through a re-roof. They had some issues with just getting some minor permits. I don't know what the delay is, but I'd be happy to find out and look back into it.
Okay.
Report back to you.
Yeah. And could we add the Woodman to that? I know we've asked that a few times. Just to...
Yeah, the Woodman's up for sale and it has not been resold.
Oh, okay.
And there's an anticipation and a desire to see another owner, bring it back to life.
Yeah, that was neat when that was around. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anything else, Commissioner Lambert?
No, thank you.
I hear somebody else.
Oh, I was gonna say I would add to that list of interest the model train museum that had been discussed a while back.
Chair Maruziak,
Yes.
yeah. So we did have a meeting just prior to this planning commission meeting with the community development committee, and we presented a presentation, an update on the status of the model train museum, including a draft lease agreement and a draft development agreement to allow the project to move forward. So the city is taking the next steps with that. Tomorrow at the F&A committee, if you'd like to tune in, you'll see another presentation similar to the one that the Community Development Committee had today. And then after that, it'll go forward to the City Council for their last meeting of this month.
Good, excellent. Anything else, Commissioner Smith?
No, nothing else this time.
Okay, Commissioner Crone?
Nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay, and I will just add to Commissioner Aliff's on the curbs, not just the curb work, which I originally thought was to expand the ADA things, but they're also kind of oddly shaped. The area toward the road it goes flat and it's very smooth, and the area on the other side is like the sharp 90-degree angle curb. And yeah, that just strikes me as kind of severe. I'm not sure why that would be there like that. You wouldn't back out of your driveway and want to back over one of those things. So it's kind of curious why that was that way. So if we could get a little update on what we're doing there and why we're doing it. I mean, yeah, I'm getting questions too. My assumption is before we can do the road, we had to do the ADA requirements, but anyway, it'd be good to get the lowdown on that. Okay, and future agenda is next agenda item.
Yeah, Commissioner Maruziak, each meeting we attempt to put up the future agenda list so you commissioners can anticipate what's coming down the pipe for the next meeting and meetings after that.
So the public hearing for the ADUs is going to be the 21st.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. That was a mistake. Let me, yeah, it's.
It will be the 7th.
Yeah,
Okay.
let me move that back over here.
Okay.
Yes, we'll have an ADU public hearing on the 7th, and we will have follow through on the land use element, goals and policies up here. And those will probably be the two items to chunk through at the next meeting. And like I said, like our LDC consultant said, likely be a longer meeting to get through the rest of the land use goals and policies.
Okay. Good. Any comments on the upcoming agenda? All right. Thank you.
I was just gonna, I don't know that it matters. I was just gonna add that I didn't bring it up in items of planning commissioner interest, but I will be out of town on vacation during that, what would be the second meeting of August. So I don't know if that matters for quorum or anything like that, but I'll be on a family vacation at that time.
On the 21st. Okay.
21st of August, yes.
Okay. Any other comments? Well, thank you, Community Development Director Arteche. Appreciate the calendar. I think it helps us look ahead as we get into the land use. We're kind of getting into the meat of the comp plan. So good.
So it's also very helpful to know which meetings are going to be running longer. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
So that's why I was glad we agreed to start earlier. I think that'll be helpful. Okay. Hearing nothing else, I move that we adjourn the meeting at 8:26 p.m. Can I get a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.